You. Obviously, actors talk, you all working with Clint Eastwood. Like, what was the preparation for all three of you, maybe separately or together, before you walk on a set with Clint Eastwood, who's known to do 1 or 2 takes and moving on like
diapers,
this?
Lots of word diapers.
Diapers?
Yeah.
That's just every day for you.
Yeah, that's just a Friday night.
Yeah, I was pretty nervous when I did my first scene with him, but he's so gentle and kind, and he's an actor as well as a wonderful director, so he knows us, and he, you know, when I was working on the press conference scene, I was trying to, you know, work on my emotion, and he noticed a few people coming over, and he said, leave her alone, you know, and I really appreciated that, you know, because a lot of directors, they just sit behind the video, you know, it's an adversarial role, and he's right in there with you.
Very engaged. Yeah, he was very engaged in all facets of it. It was really lovely to see.
That's awesome.
More mind-blowing. Clint Eastwood is directing you.
Yes.
Or are they your opposite, Tom Hanks?
Yeah, well, Clint is really crazy. It's crazy because his sets are so quiet. I mean, even, you know, folks who haven't, you know, worked as actors, they know that, you know, when you're on the set, quiet on set, action, you know, let's go, cut. And Clint isn't like that at all. He's just like, okay, go. and
what if you screw up?
We'll move the camera off him. I mean, there's so much pressure, right? It's like Tom Hanks is exactly what you think he'd be like. I'm sure you've met him before, but he's just a really cool guy, nice guy, feels like the kind of guy like be your best friend, your brother, great uncle, just a good dude. And suddenly you've seen him in a million movies, and now you're in this scene, and there's no nonsense on a Clint Eastwood set. You're just like, okay, show up, go. They just assume you're a professional, you know what to do.
Well, he doesn't do many takes, does he?
No, he doesn't. He's just like 1 or 2. So you're panicking. You're like, if I don't get this right, I'm not going to be on camera. And what they'll do is they'll just put the camera on the back of your head, and they'll just, you know, you'll do they'll take your best take, and they'll have the camera on somebody else. You don't want that to happen.
So what was it like to watch your father take on that mantle of this rather eccentric character?
I was really surprised that he was doing this film. He's somebody who absolutely hates drugs, and he's not from the 60s. He's older than that, so he didn't go through that whole hippie, dope smoking, taking acid thing, you know? Both of my parents are so straight-laced. And so I was really surprised that he was going to play somebody that was going to be driving around with a bunch of blow in the back of his truck. But, you know, I mean, it's obviously not just about that. It's really about his character and the choices that he makes and how he gets himself into this conundrum.
You are in the biz as a director as well. Does he give you advice?
I give him
do you give it right back to him? Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, you should.
Exactly. He's not much for giving advice. The first time I directed, he said, just get a lot of sleep. You're going to need it. And that was all he said, but it was very subtle in his way. But, you know, his advice to me and to all of my siblings has been, you know, do what you love to do the best job you can do, show up, be kind to people, be prepared. We were raised to be, you know, very humble and very appreciative of our circumstances in our life, and the fact that, you know, we got to grow up running around on a movie set, and, you know, I think that he's just sort of shown more by example than giving advice. Sure. As a director, you know, before I went off to shoot my first film, I went out and spent a couple of weeks with him, sort of shadowing him on a film, and it was amazing because I had never really sat there and just paid attention to him as a director. I've always sort of been flitting about and having fun, so I think just watching him by example has really been more profound for me than any verbal advice he could give.
I have worked with a number of excellent directors, but my favorite of all, I think the best of them all, is certainly for me, is Clint Eastwood. When he made his mark with Sergio's movies, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More, he established himself as this tough guy. But then he directed and acted in a movie called Play Misty for me. And that was a whole nother Clint Eastwood. Vulnerable. Very. And then I began to see somebody else there. Later on, I was working with Kevin Costner. We were doing Robin Hood, and he was saying to me that there was this script called The William Money Killings. There's a role in there. It's a wonderful script, and I think you should try to hook yourself into that. I believe Clint Eastwood has the script. All right, fine. Now, about a year and a half later, my agent calls me and says, Clint Eastwood called. Want you to be in this movie called The William Money Killings with him. That was unforgiven. And then we started working, and it was like we'd been doing it forever. You know, it was just that easy, and he was very fast and very, very easy to work for and work with, and so that started it. And then those years later, when he called for $1 Million Baby and heard that I was interested in it, did you want to do it? Yes. What role did you want to play? I said, well, I think the role for me is Scrap Iron. He said, I want to do Frankie, so let's do it. He's no nonsense. He's very quick. And he's got a lot of talent. Lot of talent. When we started developing Invictus, we said, well, who shall we get to direct? Because I can only think of two people, Clint and Eastwood. So we called him, and he said yes. All three of these episodes have been just nothing but pleasure for me. I have this great admiration for him as a man and as a talent. I know how I feel about Clint Eastwood, and I know why I feel the way I do about him. It's just a quiet love affair.
Described having Clint Eastwood direct two of your films as that was your film school.
Yeah, he had not allowed a writer to be on the set before A Perfect World, because they just slowed down the trains, and he's a quick-moving guy, and we got along real well, and he had a sense that, because he knew that I was older. I'd been to law school and practiced law and everything else before I moved out here, because I would have loved to have gone to film school. I think it would have been really helpful to me, but I just felt like that I was older, and just said, let me go ahead. I'm writing. Let me keep writing. And he liked me, and he said, I don't think he's going to get in the way, so you can come and visit the set. So it wasn't him, giving me long lectures about this, that, or the other. It would just be sitting like right here with Clint and watching him work. He's the Zen daddy.
Does not sound like Clint Eastwood, but
he's like, just check for a pulse.
Yeah,
it's just like,
okay.
I mean, he never even says action or cut. I mean, it's like one of those things. He goes, okay, so you got the scene, you know how it is. We walk around a little bit, no acting allowed. Just let's find it where we're gonna do it. Okay, we got that. Yeah, whenever. And then when the scene's over, the actors just keep going and going and going, because he doesn't yell cut. He goes, okay, let's not make a meal of it. Yeah. And that's it. We're moving on.
Yeah, it's a bird.
Your first starring role,
This was
you play jazz icon Charlie Bird, and you're directed by Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened to Baby Steps, my friend? You just jumped right in.
He really believed in me. I had never done anything to justify taking on a role like that, and it was really took a lot from me.
Mm-hmm.
I moved downtown into a loft. I started covering all my walls with all the photographs and wandering the streets and learning how to play the sax and trying to understand like this song right here. It's so difficult for me when I play it. Even now, if I could still play this little piece, and because I put so much of my emotion, each note for me was a thought or a word or a feeling, and so it really got me. Scene was kind of instrumental in me trying to understand the character and stuff. There's actually a big scene in the movie where I had decided not to sleep for a number of days, because I was preparing to die in the film, and I was laying on the couch, in the scene, and I fell asleep, and the guy was waking me up, and I looked at him and I was like, wow, this is a nice guy. He seems to have a nice smile. Who is this? And I really didn't realize I was doing the scene, and it was the doctor, you know, and I kind of looked around and I saw like there was cameras and stuff, and I saw Clint and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, Clint, you know, and he's like, no, let's do it again, you know. I was like, oh, okay.
Is there an example of a director that you've worked with that kind of exemplifies what you're talking about, like the ultimate in preparation?
I'd say Eastwood.
Yeah.
You know, I learned a lot from Clint. Very importantly, it's an anecdotal thing that he doesn't say action or cut, which, you know, you kind of go, well, who cares? But
Right.
what it does is it creates this world where the difference between the time when you're not shooting to the time when you're shooting, it all becomes one process. The camera turning on doesn't turn into some big different world, and it really shouldn't be. It shouldn't be as actors, and it shouldn't be as crew. You know, it shouldn't be like, okay, now we cut. Now we're all just fucking around. We're on our phones.
Everybody runs in. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody runs in, or that, lunch and all that kind of stuff. You know, it should be one whole continuous process.
But because one of the students is messaging me, asked for clarification on how he does it.
I mean, instead of action and cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the process?
Well, okay. Now this was back, you know, quite a few years ago. There were no open walkie-talkies, so you could never hear a walkie-talkie go off. Everybody had comms on. Sometimes he would turn on the camera for rehearsal, and we would just even shoot the rehearsal. He would just tell the cameraman, and he would say, okay, guys, go ahead, whenever you're ready, you know. And then when the thing was over, he'd kind of pause and he'd go, look around and go, okay, that's enough of that. You know, I mean, that was it. And then we'd sort of go, oh, we're moving on. Yep. But there was no screaming, yelling, you know, I mean, it was just a different kind of vibe.